It's time for the Hockey Writers Grind Line, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grind Line. This is Devin Little sitting in the host chair tonight, and I am joined, as always, by my line mate, Kyle Knopp. Kyle, it's good to see you. How's it going?
Good to see you too, Devin. It's great. Beautiful Friday night here out in Maryland. Excited to talk about some hockey.
Always
and
excited.
Some Red Wings, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We are on this show, right? And as always, when it's just you and me, Kyle, seems to be this is the common theme. We are also joined by our e-bug, our resident e-bug, Matthew Zator. Matt, good to see you as well. How are things with you?
Doing good. Just dealing with some allergies and the rain out on the West Coast here, but otherwise doing well. Hockey's, playoffs are almost down to the Stanley Cup final and draft coming, and so it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm rubbing my hands over here knowing that the draft is like a month away. So speaking of the draft, we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit in this week's episode. But before we get started, I have to let you know that our show today is sponsored by The Morning Skate, the Hockey Writers daily newsletter filled with anything and everything hockey. If you love this sport as much as we do, be sure to sign up for The Morning Skate over at morningskate, because hockey, right? .io for free delivery to your inbox Monday to Friday. You can tell I don't do this hosting thing often. So be sure to drop us a like and to subscribe to stay on top of all of the best Hockey Writers content. All right, now that that's out of the way, it's time to begin today's show, and we're going to start with, you guessed it, an oldie but a goodie, one good and one bad from the week. It seems to be a recurring theme where the host kind of slides their in to start, so here I am. I'm going to slide mine in to start. My good is not really hockey related, but hey, I actually got to meet our fantastic host, Patrick Brown, this week. We met up for a kind of an early dinner in the Kalamazoo area. It was wonderful to meet him. Pat, I know you're watching. Thanks for meeting up with me. And turns out you are as wonderful and as radiant as you are on the show. I can't confirm it, folks. And then my bad is every hockey fan on earth, I'm pretty sure, relearned the offsides rule a couple days ago. I haven't felt this out of the loop since the first time I witnessed a hybrid icing call. So thanks to the Avalanche and the Oilers for that. I mean, if you haven't seen the call, if you don't know what call I'm talking about, apparently you haven't been watching the playoffs. But thanks to Cale Makar for educating us all on what is and what isn't an offsides call. All right. We're going to start with you, our guest on today's show, Matt. So why don't you go ahead and hit us with your one good and one bad from the week?
Well, my good is the scouting combine that's coming up. It's not past week, but it's coming, and it's exciting because tomorrow that's the first time they're going to have the scouting combine in 2 years. And a bunch of the prospects will be there, and Mark and Andrew and Peter are going to be there live for the Hockey Writers, so that's exciting. We're going to get some great reaction from them, and probably a couple articles as well, so really excited to see what comes out of that combine. So that's my good, is the anticipation for that. And then my bad, but Devin, you took my bad. That offside call was insane. I don't know. I was confused. I'm like, oh yeah, it's offside. And then they go and challenge. I'm like, why is it not offside? So, So I mean, the officiating, even the weird, like even that, kicking motion I don't believe was a kicking motion, and that kind of was a weird one too. So there's some weird stuff that's happening in the playoffs. So if you're not watching, there's a lot of drama, a lot of stuff is happening, especially when it ends up being against, it seems like Edmonton's always involved in these. Both of those were involved. Edmonton was in the game. So I'm just going to go with that too, because I don't think there was much else that was bad coming from this week in my mind. So, but that was a weird one for me.
Yeah, I can confidently say that my jaw was on the floor when they said it was a good goal. I did not see that coming. Going over to you now, Kyle. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and share your one good and one bad from the week?
Yeah, so I kind of have two goods. They kind of coincide. One is kind of just the drama of the playoff.
For sure.
As Matt just mentioned, there has been a lot of drama, but I think that's good because it has built this, aura that you can kind of argue about these calls, or you can discuss what's happening or not. It's not always good. Sometimes you want these games to be clean cut. Usually you want these games to be clean cut. But has been kind of fun to really just have that discussion point, especially Matt and I on our podcasts. It makes it a lot easier for us to have topics to discuss. So I would think that is a good. The other good I want to
plug.
Absolutely. His shout out is Nazem Kadri, and just his 3 primary assists the other night, and how he's just come back from getting some death threats after the whole Bennington issue and just really responded. My bad it was that I wasn't in Michigan to meet up with you guys over in the Kalamazoo area. That's right in my old stomping grounds. I'm from Battle Creek, so I know that area well. But also the Edmonton Oilers, just their luck there right now, and their sense of urgency. I mean, they came out against there's the Colorado second string goalie, kind of a cold goalie. They only put 1 on him in that game, that 8-5 game, or 8-6 game. Sorry. But they needed to get after him early, and they had like 0 scoring chances in the third period and only like 5 shots. Like there's no urgency there. And that they didn't look like a team that was hungry. And I believe it was Josh Archibald. Like he didn't lay out on that one shot. Nurse just turned over the puck like so many times and caused most of the goals against. I mean, the Edmonton, they look like they didn't have it. So that's going to be my bad for the week.
Maybe this is a bit too early to say something like this, but it really seems, at least early on, like the Avalanche are clearly the better team. I'm hoping that playing on home ice will give the Oilers kind of the boost they need to make this a series, because the ingredients are there for the series to be one of the best of the playoffs so far. But right now, Colorado's just skating laps around them. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, not unless you like to take the over. Well, not last game. Actually, that bit me last game, so never mind.
That does real quick. I was one of my ideas for one bad for the week was anybody who's betting on that series. So
I did twice and didn't win it either. So I'm done with that series.
All right. Well, we've talked about the Avalanche and the Oilers plenty now. So let's talk about some Red Wings, shall we? Let's shift focus to the Red Wings. And now a couple weeks ago, we talked about Alex Nedeljkovic and how his season played out. So I figured that it was time to talk about another player that the Red Wings added during last year's offseason. And the player I have in mind is Pius Suter. In the 26-year-old's first year of the 2-year contract that he signed last offseason, he had 15 goals and 36 points through 82 games. He was primarily used as the team's second-line center, where he won 49.3% of his faceoffs. He played on the power play, he played on the penalty kill, and he averaged just under 17 minutes of ice time this season. So my question about all of this, now having laid this all out there for you guys, my question is, what were your impressions of Suter this season, and what do you think his fit is with the Red Wings heading into the second year of his deal? And Kyle, I want to start with you on this one.
My impression of him was that he filled in a role that was much above his pay grade. And what I mean by that is he was asked to play second line center, and he really kind of fits the mold of more of a offensive minded third line center. And we talked about this extensively last year about whether or not Larkin was a true first line center. And if not, he would be really a number 2 center. That argument could be brought up, and he could be thrown back into the 1C argument, but that still doesn't replace Suter as the second line center. So my impression was that, he held his own. We didn't ask him. The Red Wings asked him to do a lot this season, and he really stepped up as much as he could, but I still think he was quite a bit in over his head. So if they can bring in someone to play in that second line role and let Suter really just kind of focus on that third line, or even maybe the fourth line is like a secondary, line 2A, line 2B, and then third line being third line, or fourth line being the third line. Sorry. Kind of in that role of that second B or third line role, I think he would do much better moving forward.
For sure. And then just real quick curveball here for you. Could you see him playing on the wing next year, depending on, if they sign a free agent or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they could certainly move him over and use him in that slot. He's the type of player that seems to be adaptive, and he likes to be a playmaker type. So being on that wing, he could lead that entry from the outside lanes. He could, get into the corners off of a dump in and then really kind of use his skill to cycle the puck up or find that guy crashing the net. So I think he really, has that ability to play winger. It will come down to his thought process, though. Will he buy into that?
For sure.
As in that team role, or will he think that he deserves to be a second line center because that's what he played all season?
Yeah. I think that whoever the Red Wings hire as their new coach will probably have a big say in that as well. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, we want to get your thoughts on this topic now. Pius Suter, did he stand out in a good way for you? Like I said, 36 points in 82 games. What do you think his outlook is for the Red Wings heading into the second year of his deal?
Well, I think he was very inconsistent in his offense. So, I mean, maybe like you guys said, it was miscast, maybe where he was, but judging by the World Championships, he knows how to play with skilled players. Yeah. So if you give him some skill to work with, he may actually be able to produce. So, and that happened in Chicago too. Like I'm pretty sure he played with Kane. And he had a really good season. So if he's given skill on his line, I think he could be a pretty good contributor, even on a first or second line. But, if he's on the third line, that shows that Red Wings have some depth. So, right now, if he's on the second line, it shows that maybe Red Wings need something. And that's probably what they're going to be looking for. And, going on the wing is actually something that could work too. I mean, if he can, then you've got more versatility. And that's always good to have a guy that can play center and go on the wing and be productive. In the NHL, that's a very valuable thing to have, especially when you get down to, into the playoffs, when you want to move guys around and say, okay, now you can go onto the second line up to the wing or move them to center down to whatever. Right. So changes the look. But I think he does have a little bit of a future with the Red Wings. I mean, he's not old. He's still in that young range. Maybe not super long term, but if he can actually start producing at a level of a, second, third line guy. And I mean, I think he can definitely do it because, like I said, he shows that he can score with guys that can, create chances for him and give him some space. So I think the Red Wings still have a guy that can do that.
Good stuff. Totally agree. For my part, just want to throw my 2 cents in there. One, I liked Suter. I think he is somebody that stands out to me as somebody entering next season that could be on the trade block if the Red Wings are outside of the playoffs, right? He's entering the last year of his deal, so he's kind of that, perfect rental player for somebody. Could play up and down the lineup. The Red Wings could probably get something nice for him. Or they could re-sign him. He kind of can be whatever the Red Wings need him to be, and that's kind of a useful asset in that sense. And when I did my my player evaluations that I released last month, Suter was one of the more interesting players to look at because the eye test was kind of favorable for him because he did a lot of the small things that you need players to do to help out higher skilled forwards. He later in the season, he played between Jacob Vrana and Philip Zadina. And Suter was the one doing all the defensive work and allowing those two to be, play at their offensive games. You need guys like that. But at the same time, if you're playing second line center, you need more than 36 points in the season. It is what it is. So I think when it comes to Suter, I think we can all agree that he's a good player. You know, there's definitely a place on him for him on a championship caliber team. It's just a matter of where and what the fit is. So hopefully he can kind of find his niche with the Red Wings next year, because I don't know that he necessarily found that this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Now pivoting from, this past season, let's look ahead to what I think most Red Wings fans have on their minds nowadays, the draft. This week, actually earlier this week, the first round of our site-wide mock draft was published, and I had the pleasure of picking for the Red Wings at 8th overall. I then proceeded to surprise even myself a little bit by who I took. I took Austrian center Marco Kasper at 8th overall. Other players on the board at the time included Brad Lambert, Cutter Gauthier, Frank Nazar, Joachim Kamel, and others. So there were some pretty big names still on the board. Now, I'm going to start with you on this one, Matt, because you participated in the mock draft with us. And of course, you and I are line mates over at Prospect Corner, so this is kind of our alley on the other show, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what do you make of my pick in the mock draft? No, don't hold back. And do you think Kasper makes sense for the Red Wings? And finally, would you have gone a different route with the pick?
Well, first of all, I was surprised when you picked him, because there were other guys on the board that I thought was more, in that range. And Kasper is supposed to be drafted in the 15, 20, perhaps 20 and 25. On most boards, he's around that range. And, that's bumping him up. I'm not saying he's not worth at that range, but it is a surprise to be drafted at 8th overall if that would happen. But having said that, it's a very Yzerman pick. I mean, he did that with Moritz Seider. He really liked him. We have no inside information. We don't know if he likes Kasper at all, but he's the guy that I would think they would have an eye on, especially with how much scouting they do in Europe around that area. He's not Swedish, but he does play in Europe. And their scouting department out there is like top notch. So I would think they would have, and Seider wasn't Swedish either. He was German. So, and guys like Karamaki were already off the board. So, and another guy, Matthew Savoy, was another guy that was off the board too. So, now you're kind of looking, well, there's a lot of guys you could actually pick here. Kasper's off, maybe a little off the board, but I think he does fit what the Red Wings could pick. So I do like the pick, because I really like Kasper as a player. I think he's a guy that's going to make the NHL. Is going to be a very skilled top 6 player, and haven't had a real good Austrian since probably Thomas Vanek, I think, was probably the last one that was
probably
elite. So I mean, and Kasper I think could be that. So I have no problem with the pick, and so I mean it. But at 8th overall, maybe it's a little high, but I like it.
I will say in a few months ago, if we were talking about this, Kasper was a player that I had in mind for if the Red Wings were able to acquire a second first round pick. Because like you said, he is kind of projected to go 20-ish. And if you got a second pick, you're in that realm. So here we are, though. I took him 8th. And one person I know who definitely approves of that because of our grind line column that we do every now and then is my buddy Kyle here. So pivoting over to you, same question. What are your thoughts on the Red Wings taking Kasper at 8th overall? And is there anybody else that you might have your eye on for that pick?
I love it. I was also surprised you took him, but when I saw it and you tweeted it out, oh man, it made me happy. So when I made the pick in the grind line, I just went through kind of the list of prospects and really looked at names that kind of jumped out at me in that somewhere between that 6 to 20 range, really. But I think I had Kasper right around 15 in that range. So I think it was really more 6 to 16. I think I was looking at, and the reason I did that is that was the area that Lucas Raymond kind of fell into. That was the area that and maybe even higher that Moritz Seider was falling into. And those are two draft picks that Yzerman took and really relied on and did his homework on and really, really liked them and took them higher than they were expected to go. Maybe not so much Raymond, but definitely Seider. So with that in mind, Kasper really stood out to me. And the reason he stood out to me is he's been playing in the Swedish Hockey League, which is with men. He's an 18-year-old playing with men. He played on the same team that Seider played on during the COVID season last year. And he started out kind of slow, only 7 goals and 4 assists in 46 games during the season, but then really started to come into his own in the playoffs with 3 goals and 3 assists in 13 games. That's half a point per game. That's being very productive against men, the best men in your league. And then not only that, he helped lead Rogel to a Champions Hockey League title, which is against other men in other leagues from around Europe, by getting 6 points, 2 goals and 4 assists. I think it was about 6 or 7 games. I don't remember exactly how many games, but he's just really shown that he's come into his own and developed as someone that can read the game and really produce at a high level already. And he plays with Niederbach and Wallander. So, Red Wing brass has been keeping their eye on him, they know what he can do. And so that's really why he jumped out at me. And so, I'm still hanging tough at Kasper at 8. And, I mean, there's so many names on the board that it's not even really worth going through them right now because it's, it's mere speculation. And I like that. Well, I think I like what Kasper will bring to the team. And not to mention, we're sorry to cut you off. We're just talking about Suter being a winger that might be able to play. A center playing winger. And that's exactly what Kasper is. So I forgot to make that point.
and shout out to our teammate Logan, who has appeared on the show a couple weeks ago. He just released the Marco Kasper draft target article, and he made a suggestion for a future nickname if he is a Red Wing. Ghost. Tell me that's not a good nickname for Kasper.
That's a great one.
And real quick, I do want to say I like hearing both of you say that it's a surprising pick, but it does seem like an Yzerman pick because that's exactly what I was going for. So mission accomplished. All right, good stuff, fellas. Now let's take a quick time out and pay some bills, shall we? This is a reminder that today's show is brought to you by the Morning Skates, a daily newsletter sent straight to your inbox that is filled with all sorts of hockey-related goodies. While we might not know for years if the Red Wings pick in the 2022 draft will have been the right choice, you can rest easy knowing that signing up for the Morning Skate is one of the best choices you can possibly make. So be sure to sign up and tell the managing editor that we sent you.
Please do.
All right, good stuff. Moving on to our next topic, we're going to talk about another article that was released this week, and this one was written solely by me. In this article, I suggested that the Detroit Red Wings target Calgary Flames center Sean Monahan as a cap dump acquisition, similar to what they did a couple of years ago with Mark Stahl. Essentially, what we do is we provide the Flames with some extra cap space, considering they have to sign both Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau, and they don't have a ton of cap space to make it all happen. And the Red Wings would just take on the final year of the 27-year-old center's contract. He makes a little over $6 million a year. The Red Wings are projected to have a little under $36 million in cap space, so they have room to work, plenty of space to work with. While that is the example that I wrote about, there are plenty of other potential cap dumps out there that the Red Wings could target. So Kyle, I want to start with you on this one. Would you like to see Sean Monahan in a Red Wings uniform? And is there another cap dump candidate out there that you could see Detroit targeting?
I would love to see Sean Monahan in a Red Wings jersey. I hadn't really thought about this until your article came out, and it kind of like made me step back. And the more you think about it, he could be that second line center that would be a really good 1-2 punch with Larkin and fill some needs for the Red Wings while clearing up a lot of space that the Flames need. And, they could really, really force the issue and ask for a sweetener in this deal too, by taking on this dump, which would be amazing because the Flames have some really good young products coming up. So it could be really interesting. And I think it's something that Yzerman should certainly explore. In terms of some other guys that, I have my eye on, there isn't anyone necessarily that's jumping out and in terms of like a cap dump, but there's a couple free agents that have been kind of interesting to look at. But I don't think many of them are going to come. So like one would be like Claude Giroux, but I think he's going to want to re-sign either in Florida or go back to Philly to retire, but likely will want to do another year in Florida, to go other instances of those cases too, where players are going for the cup and probably wouldn't really want to go, toward the end of their career, come back to the Red Wings. So you have to look at some younger players. And so there are quite a few players. Sorry, let me pull up my list. My computer screen kind of froze on me here. But there's a couple young guys that I think that the Red Wings should target. And one of them, I think we've talked about him extensively. There you are, Devin, is Vinny Trocheck. And I know he's an unrestricted free agent, so it wouldn't really be a cap dump, but I think that's a guy of his caliber that they should kind of go after in that regard.
For sure. All right. Good stuff, Kyle. Moving over to you now, Matt. Same question. And you've gotten a bit more of a look at Sean Monahan than we have, being out there in the Pacific Division. Do you think Sean Monahan makes sense for the Red Wings? And is there another cap dump target that you would look at if you were Steve Yzerman?
Well, Monahan he's lost a bit of a step. I mean, he's not the same top line center that he used to be. And he's been thrown on the fourth line, been healthy scratch and all that stuff. And but he still has some game in him. I think he just needs a change of scenery. And I think that the Flames will trade him to someone. And the Red Wings, I mean, definitely need a guy like that. We just talked about needing another center, and he is another center, and he can still be, I think, a productive top six guy. Like I say, he's not old, really old. I think he still has some years still left in his career. I think he can turn it around. And he's still very skilled. So, I mean, he's removed from a 70-point season not that long ago. So it's not like it was like 10 years ago that he put up those points. So I think he could definitely thrive in another, on another team with different line mates. I mean, we all know Calgary's not going to use him on the top line anymore, especially if they can get Gaudreau back, and that line is just so good. So Monahan would definitely do well, I think, in Detroit. As for another cap dump, I'm looking at the Vegas Golden Knights, and this is where Detroit should look. Any team should actually be looking. I just wrote an article of the Canucks targeting the Golden Knights because they need cap space, and it's insane. They have $64 million tied up in like 8 players. So I mean, it's really insane. So they're gonna have to get rid of guys. They can't re-sign a few guys, and I'm sure they want to re-sign Nicholas Waugh. He's playing, he's played really well for them. They may lose him if they don't get anyone up. And I'm looking at a guy like Jonathan Marchessault. He's got 2 years left on his deal at $5 million. So it's not like it's going to be a lot of years. He has a modified no trade clause, so he may have Detroit on his list of no trade. So that may be a may not even work out. But Marchessault is probably the guy I would target. All the other contracts are ridiculously long-term. So if they go after a guy like William Karlsson, lots of years left. Pacioretty has one more, but he's at $7 million. I don't know. Again, modified no trade clause. So, I mean, he may not want to come to Detroit. But there are a few names on the Golden Knights that you can definitely target as a cap dump, because I'm sure they're going to be trying to get rid of some of these contracts. I'm literally looking at William Karlsson, though, as probably the guy they're going to try to get rid of. But I don't know if Detroit wants to take on crazy. I'm looking like at least 4 or 5 years left on this. So it's like, it's a bit insane. But Marchessault is probably the name for me.
Yeah, if I can add something now that my screen is unfrozen, and able to look at my list. I'm glad you brought up, excuse me, the Vegas Golden Knights. They're one team on my list. The other that I have down is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they're going to need
for sure
some camp space relief as well. And one name on that kind of stuck out to me was Alex Killorn.
There you
could
go.
be
There you go.
a guy that you could snag for that second line center role, or even third line center toward the end of his career. But I think that's another name that could be looked at, or even another team that you could kind of maybe pull a few players from.
Yeah, for sure. And one other team I will throw out to maybe target that needs to create some cap space would be the Pittsburgh Penguins. They got to get Letang and Malkin signed, and they also don't have a ton of room to work with. And I would be looking at maybe acquiring one of their defensemen. They need help on that left side. And the Penguins have plenty of left-handed defensemen that they could potentially deal, maybe a Marcus Pettersson, maybe a Brian Dumoulin, but it would depend on what they're willing to give up versus what Detroit is also willing to give up. So I think the fit would be there with Pittsburgh, but we'll see. And that's not too, and that goes along with the Vegas and the Tampa Bay examples as well. Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Moving on now to our final topic of tonight's show, and we're going to stick with the running theme here. The conference finals are upon us. So like we did with the first and the second rounds, we're going to share our favorite memories from the conference finals, beginning with our Vancouver Canucks reporter, Matt. Matt, what is your favorite memory from the conference finals?
Well, the only one that I really remember is the Canucks going to the Stanley Cup final in the conference final in I believe it was game six, overtime, and Bieksa shoots it from and it hits off it wasn't Bieksa that shot it. It was Edler that shot it into the zone, hit off the stanchion, bounced to Bieksa, and then Bieksa shoots and everyone doesn't know where the puck is, not even the goaltender, and it's in the net and everyone's going crazy. And it was delayed because I'm watching on TV and we're like, what happened? Puck's in the net. What the heck happened? And they thought it went out of play, that it hit the netting and came down, but it didn't. When they did the replay from the far end, it bounced off the stanchion. It actually looked like it bounced off Henrik Sedin's head and then went out. So that's my favorite one. I still remember it to this day. Jim Houston saying Canucks are going to the Stanley Cup final. And I'm like, this is insane. And then we all know what happened the next series. But at 2 games. I mean, the Canucks had 2-game lead in that Stanley Cup final to start with. And then it all went to hell, and I don't want to remember the rest of that. But that moment though was insane, and it was a great moment, and that I'll always remember.
Very well, it might have been the highest point of the Canucks, at least in the 21st century. Like, absolutely,
yes.
And honestly, just real quick, that doesn't remind me of like the end of the 2010 playoffs. Where Patrick Kane scored that goal and nobody knew where it was. And like they didn't know whether to celebrate because they won the cup or not. And it was good times, good memories there. Kyle, going over to you now. What is your favorite memories from the conference final round?
Yeah, we've been lucky and blessed to have quite a few to be able to pick from. Sorry, Matt. But my favorite is still 2002. I was 16 years old. I was a sophomore in high school going into my junior year. I remember game 7. I was actually umpiring, 16 years old. I was probably umpiring like U12, U14 baseball. I had the biggest strike zone that night. I was behind the plate. Everything was a strike. I told the kids just start swinging. I'm getting out of here. I got to at least get home for the third period. I was expecting an overtime game. And we had a couple parents that were listening to the game in their cars, like lining the field and whatnot. And, and all of a sudden we start hearing horns blaring. We're like, why are they blaring their horn? Like, yeah, that was probably a ball, but I called it a strike. Like, whatever. Like, it was swung. Like couple minutes later, horn blares again. Like, what is going on? Turns out the Red Wings are scoring left and right. And the parents are just letting us know. I think I got home. It was already 5 or 6-0, and Wah had been pulled. And, I got to see the final dagger in the third period. But, that to me kind of really, I know the Avalanche went on to win it again, or not. They were around the next few years, but that really kind of ended the whole like Detroit Avalanche rivalry for me. And like, kind of was like that, like we finally like, the Red Wings put them in their place, and they're like, all right, like we're done with you. We're not messing around anymore. Like we're coming out, we're finishing this. And that kind of was like the final, the last death blow. So at least to me, it kind of felt that way. So that was always one of my favorite. I'm sure I made a lot of kids mad that day, but hey, I had a game to get home to. So 16-year-old me did not care.
Could not have picked a better choice. And real quick before I give mine, stay tuned to our viewers. Stay tuned because on Monday we're going to be dropping another Grind Line column. We're going to be talking about our favorite memories from the Detroit-Colorado rivalry, to kind of go hand in hand with that ESPN documentary that's coming out. And Kyle, your thing just kind of reminded me of it because that rivalry was obviously one of the most heated in all of sports, and then the Red Wings kicked them in their behinds. And I mean, it was like it was 5-6 years long. I mean, it was even longer than that, but it was really like it was bad blood for 6 years. I mean, that's crazy to think about. To the point where, like, we're saying we want to see Darren Helm win the cup, and Pat goes, no. Like that blood is still kind of there.
Yeah, like if he would be with any other team, it's like it's crazy. Even now, like I live out in Maryland, where people are mostly Caps fans, or who you're cheering for in the cup now. And I'm like, I kind of think Colorado's going to win it. Like, aren't you from Michigan? Like, are you allowed to do that? Like, like, I don't know, I'm sure I'm going to have to, check something at the state border when I come back home. But like, yeah, it's pretty crazy how deep that feud really went.
Yeah. It sounds like the Chicago Canucks for a few years there, where Chicago just kept kicking the Canucks out of the playoffs, and finally Burrows scores the dagger to kick them out of the first round, and that was in doubt too. They had had a 3-0 lead in Detroit. I mean, not Detroit. Chicago. Chicago comes back and ties it and goes to Game 7, and if they got that, it's going to keep going. But yeah, that was I'd say that was probably the end of that one, because from that, I mean, now if Canucks play Chicago, and it's like, it's not the same anymore. So
it's not must see TV anymore. If there's one thing to take from this little bit, it's that the playoffs is where you're going to build a rivalry, because real quick, my favorite memory from the conference finals is from that same 2002 series against the Avalanche. It is the Patrick Waugh Statue of Liberty moments. That is kind of the beginning of the end for the Avalanche in that series. That put the Red Wings up 1-0 in Game 6. At the time, the Red Wings were facing elimination. They were down 3-2 in the series. And from that point, the Red Wings scored 9 straight goals, and they've beaten the Avalanche since then in 6 straight playoff games. So to Kyle's point, ding dong, the rivalry is dead. So that is my favorite conference finals memory. One of my earliest hockey memories too, for what it's worth. And that is our show. Thank you so much to Matt for joining us once again. Thank you to Kyle for letting me sit in this host chair. It was quite comfortable. And thank you.
Enjoyed it. It was fun.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to sign up for the morning skate. Details are down in that description. I haven't pointed down this episode, so there it is. And while you're down there, be sure to give this video a like, follow the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment so we know you stopped by. I looked at the comment totals for last week's episode this morning, and I was pleasantly surprised. So kudos to you all. Make sure you say hello down in the comment section. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you very much.